Yes, finally, Apple is doing it. They're giving us a 14-inch iPad after so many years of people asking for a larger iPad than the 12.9-inch. We're finally getting the 14-inch, and it is confirmed by the most reliable Apple analyst in terms of display leaks, Ross Young. And in this video, we actually have some exclusive leaks and information that he has been giving to us through his super follower program on Twitter. So with that said, let's jump into this new 14-inch iPad because I actually have 3 different scenarios for what this 14-inch could actually turn out to be. So I'll be going through those 3 in this video. So let's get started. Last week, we got a really surprising leak from Majin Buu saying that his sources are talking about Apple developing a 14.1-inch iPad M2 with 512 gigs of storage and 16 gigs of RAM, saying that it's going to be alongside the 11-inch model and a new 12.9-inch model, saying that we could get it in October or in November. Now, at first, this seemed kind of sketchy and hard to believe, but guess what happened the very next day? Ross Young came out and confirmed that yes, Apple is working on a 14.1-inch iPad Pro, and first he said it's gonna have mini LEDs and ProMotion, saying that it could be coming in early 2023. So Ross Young actually confirmed Majin Buu's leak. And making it even better, Mark Gurman came out and quote tweeted Ross Young's leak, confirming that yes, Apple is working on a larger iPad. So that's very nice to see because Mark Gurman is one of the most reliable Apple analysts of all time, has been around for many, many years. But unfortunately, we have some bad news that Ross Young gave us. But before I get into that news, I want to show you guys what a 14-inch iPad could potentially look like if you're trying to figure out what it could be. Well, right here, we have the 11-inch iPad Air, for example, and this is the huge 14-inch iPad model. Whatever it's gonna be, this is how big this one's gonna be, and look at that. That is a massive difference in terms of the actual screen real estate and just massive. It's crazy to believe. And here's the shot from the back. It's a lot bigger. I can imagine this is gonna be quite heavy, so you'll probably need a keyboard case, but let's get into that new leak from Ross Young. He ended up confirming with his sources that no, ProMotion is unlikely to come to this new 14-inch iPad. Not only that, but it's also not gonna be getting mini LED as well. So basically, those are the 2 things that make an iPad Pro an iPad Pro. So because of that, he's saying that it's likely that this is probably just some kind of other iPad. And thankfully, I am super following Ross Young on Twitter, which is $5 a month, but it's worth it because his exclusive tweets that he said about that 14-inch, it's very, very interesting. But first, I want to point out that right now in 2022, Ross Young is literally the most accurate Apple leaker out there. 92.9% accuracy, and interestingly, the only thing he got wrong was that he said the iPhone SE3 will be called the SE Plus 5G. So he just got the name wrong, and that was probably one of his guesses or something from a source. But in terms of the actual details of displays, he's been nailing the display sizes, including the MacBook Pros, the iPad Mini 6, and the MacBook Air, which is 13.6 inches. So I ended up replying to his super tweet where he said that the 14-inch iPad is not gonna be an iPad Pro model and that it's gonna be coming in the first quarter of 2023. And I asked him about another scenario that I have. Is there a chance it's some sort of tablet that's meant to be used for the smart home or something else, maybe like for a potential HomePod / display combo? And he said there is always a chance. However, in terms of iPads, it gives Apple a way to upsell the 10.2-inch iPad customers to a 14-inch display panel because the panel prices are really cheap and they're getting cheaper, so it won't cost much more than the 10.2-inch. And at that point I said, hey, what if it's basically a 14.1-inch iPad Max for $450 to $550, and he actually agreed that it could be a possibility. But getting back to that smart home tablet idea, Ed Hardy, who is also a super follower, mentioned the theory saying, could this be the rumored combination HomePod / Apple TV / FaceTime camera product from Apple with a built-in screen just for video calls? And I said, yes, that's what I am wondering as well, because if we go back, we can see that March 22nd of 2021, Apple was developing a new HomePod model, or multiple models, with screens and cameras. So what if they take a 14-inch iPad display kind of tablet and combine it with this hub that also has a HomePod built in, where you stick it into your kitchen and it uses center stage to track you around your kitchen as you're chatting with someone on FaceTime. Not only that, but Ming Chiu Kuo came out just last month saying that Apple is going to be releasing a new HomePod in late 2022 or early 2023, which actually matches up to Ross Young's date for the 14-inch iPad. So what if this is actually the new hybrid HomePod slash tablet screen device? But unfortunately, Ross Young is pretty clear that he believes it is actually gonna be an iPad, and he mentioned it multiple times throughout multiple super tweets that he was putting out, so I don't think it's gonna be that new tablet with Home Hub product from Apple. But now, moving away from that idea, we gotta try to make sense of this 14-inch iPad, because Ross Young was saying it's not gonna have promotion and it's not gonna have mini LED, which likely means it's not gonna be an iPad Pro. So why would Apple create this new product with a larger display than the current 12.9-inch iPad Pro and not have it be a Pro model? It doesn't make any sense, just like Stephen Warwick was saying right here. How can we make sense of this new product? Well, he is saying he agrees that it's surprising, but both panel and LED suppliers confirmed, so it is accurate. And he's saying that going from 10 inches to 14 inches is a big jump, which basically implies that he's talking about the 10.2-inch budget iPad potentially also having a 14-inch size. And once again, he mentions that the 10-inch panel prices in 2022 won't be much different than 14-inch in 2023, so it could still be priced low because mini LEDs would have made it more expensive. And somebody asked iPad Air Max, he said, or just iPad Max. So it's the budget model, but with a max size display. And why would Apple do this? Well, MarkTech1996 on Twitter made a good point. He said he wholeheartedly recommends that Apple makes their Pro iPads bigger and gives them a slightly wider aspect ratio so that Stage Manager has all the space it needs and more people are incentivized to actually use it, because once again, Stage Manager is nice, but it kind of brings the content into the center of the screen, so it'd be nice to have a larger display. However, Apple is not giving Stage Manager to iPads without the M1. So if Apple made a budget iPad Max, it would not get Stage Manager because it's not going to get an M1, because the current rumors are pointing to it getting an A14 chip, not an M1. But hear me out, because I actually have a very, very interesting theory in terms of how Apple is changing up their strategy over the past couple of years and moving forward. Well, first of all, we know that Apple's gonna have their iPhone 14 lineup with both a 14 and a 14 Max, which is basically gonna be the same specs, just a larger display. Then we have the rumors of the 13-inch and 15-inch MacBook Air, which basically same specs again, but with a larger display size. We have the 14 Pro and the 14 Pro Max, same story. Then we have the 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pro, same exact specs, but with larger display, higher price. So what if Apple is planning to have a budget iPad and then a 14-inch budget iPad? You got the same specs, no difference, just a larger display, larger battery. It actually follows up and matches to what Apple is doing with their current product lineups. So after analyzing all that information from Ross Young and everything else with all my research, I've come up with a third scenario that I think could potentially happen with a new Apple lineup strategy, with Apple giving us a 10.9-inch iPad Air and 14.1-inch iPad Air Max. You basically just have the larger display size for a larger price. Now, I don't know if they're actually gonna call it Max. They could just call it the 14-inch iPad Air, but it actually makes more sense for the iPad Air than it does for the budget iPad, because the iPad Air is gonna have either an M1 or an M2 chip. So it's gonna support Stage Manager, which means the larger 14-inch display is gonna make use of that new Stage Manager feature. So it totally makes more sense for an iPad Air than it does for a budget iPad, in my opinion. And what makes it even better for Apple is that because it has a massive 14-inch display, you can't really use it in your hands, so you need a keyboard case. And of course, Apple is working on a next generation Magic Keyboard, which would come in a new 14-inch size to support that, because you need to support all that weight. And Apple could literally charge, I don't know, $400, $450 for that huge Magic Keyboard with new features. I can totally see them doing that and making a lot of money. So here's my theory on the actual pricing and why it makes so much sense. What if this is gonna be a 14-inch iPad Air Max? They could give it the same M1 chip again, because the iPad Pro is gonna have the M2, so they're gonna make it feel a little bit more exclusive, while sticking to the M1. It's gonna have the same specs and features as the current iPad Air 5 with the M1, just a larger display for $750, which is exactly in the middle between the iPad Air 5 for $600 and the iPad Pro for potentially $900, which I think they're gonna increase the price to $900. It's gonna slot in perfectly right there, just filling in that pricing gap with Apple's iPad lineup and their strategy. And making it even better, I think Apple could potentially have a spring event in 2023 where they show off this new 14-inch iPad Max, potentially alongside a new 15-inch M2 MacBook Air, which also has the same specs but a larger display. And I know some people were saying that it doesn't make sense for this new 14-inch to not be an iPad Pro, but once again, Ross Young said, hey, no mini LED, no ProMotion, which confirms it's not gonna be an iPad Pro, so why would Apple make a larger iPad that's not a Pro that is larger than the 12.9-inch iPad Pro? Well, it's gonna allow people to get a larger display for a smaller price. Of course, they're gonna be sacrificing features like those display features, and that's gonna be really nice for a lot of people. And I think that this 14-inch size is eventually gonna be showing up in the iPad Pro lineup in the future, so they are gonna make that bigger as well. But for now, a $750 14-inch M1 iPad Air, I think fits perfectly into the lineup. So with that said, hopefully you enjoyed this video, and if you completely disagree, comment down below or subscribe up above if you liked it. Definitely check out one of those two right there. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.